The silk was wrong. Clara Wessel stood in the doorway of her dead sister's room, her gloved fingers pressed against the doorframe. The scent of wilted lilies and carbolic acid hung in the air like a confession. 3 weeks. Emma had been dead for 3 weeks, and already her belongings were packed into a single trunk, arranged with military precision. Too fast. Too neat. Clara stepped inside, her boots silent on the Persian carpet. The afternoon light filtered through lace curtains, casting pale shadows across walls the color of fresh cream. A porcelain wash basin gleamed on the nightstand. The bed was stripped to its mattress, a naked thing without dignity. She knelt before the trunk and lifted the lid. Emma's dresses lay folded inside, layered like the petals of a funeral wreath. The green wool traveling suit, the ivory morning gown, and there at the bottom, the blue silk with pearl buttons. Clara's breath caught. Emma had loved that dress. She had worn it to their father's funeral, to her own engagement party before the broken betrothal, to every moment that mattered. And Emma, fastidious Emma, who alphabetized her bookshelf and counted the stitches in her embroidery, had always folded it the same way. Collar to hem, sleeves crossed, pearl buttons facing inward to prevent scratching. This dress was crumpled, sleeves twisted, buttons exposed. Someone had searched it. Someone had searched it and failed to hide their haste. Clara lifted the dress to her face. The fabric smelled of lavender and something else, something chemical. Her fingers found the seam along the bodice, the hidden pocket where Emma had tucked love notes as a girl, where she had hidden chocolate from their governess, where she had always kept her secrets. The pocket was empty, but the stitching was fresh. Clara's heart began to pound. She needed light. She needed privacy. She needed to be anywhere but this room that smelled of death and lies. She tucked the dress beneath her arm and walked out without looking back. The corridor stretched before her, lined with doors painted the same soothing white. Somewhere a woman laughed, the sound high and brittle. A nurse in a starched cap passed Clara with a tray of glass bottles, her eyes sliding away as if Clara were invisible. The Belvedere Sanatorium, the finest rest cure in the Swiss Alps, where wealthy women came to heal their nerves and wealthy women came to die. Clara followed the signs to the administrative wing. Her appointment with Dr. Richter was in 10 minutes, but she had stopped caring about appointments the moment she saw that crumpled silk. The doctor's office door stood open. Inside, a man sat behind a mahogany desk, writing in a leather journal. He looked up as Clara entered, and his face arranged itself into an expression of professional sympathy. Johann Richter was 45 years old, with silver temples and the kind of handsome face that aged like fine wine. His voice, when he spoke, was velvet. "Miss Wessel, please sit. I cannot express how deeply we all mourn your sister's passing." Clara sat. The chair was designed to be comfortable, to make patients feel safe. She felt neither. "Dr. Richter, I received your letter. Cardiac failure, you wrote, exacerbated by melancholia." "A tragic combination. The heart and the mind are more connected than modern medicine fully understands." Clara placed her hands flat on her knees, steady, controlled. "My sister danced until dawn at the Kramer Ball 1 week before she arrived here. Her physician in Munich declared her heart exemplary. She was 24 years old." Richter's smile did not waver. Grief often clouds our memories, Miss Vessel. Your sister came to us in a state of severe nervous agitation. The strain on her cardiovascular system was immense. We did everything in our power. What strain? What agitation? Her letters mention nothing but rest and mountain air. A pause. The doctor's pen tapped once against the desk. I see. You received her letters. Every week, without fail, until they stopped. Miss Wessel. Richter leaned forward, his voice dropping to a confiding murmur. Your sister's condition deteriorated rapidly in her final days. She suffered from delusions, paranoid fantasies. It is, I regret to say, not uncommon among women of her temperament. We limited her correspondence to protect her from further distress. Clara felt the words land like stones in her chest. Delusions, paranoid fantasies, women of her temperament. You censored her letters. We protected her, and you. Clara stood. Her legs felt distant as though they belonged to someone else. I wish to see her death certificate. And her medical file. I am afraid that is quite impossible. Patient confidentiality extends beyond death. She was my sister, and she was my patient. Their eyes met. For a moment, something flickered behind Richter's professional mask. Something cold and calculating. Then the velvet voice returned. Miss Wessel, you have suffered a terrible loss. Perhaps you should consider staying with us for a few days. The mountain air, as you say, can work wonders. Clara walked to the door. She paused with her hand on the frame. Dr. Richter, my sister was not nervous. She was not delusional. She was the strongest woman I have ever known. And I intend to discover what truly happened to her. She did not wait for his response. The terrace overlooked a valley carved by ancient glaciers, the peaks rising like broken teeth against a pale sky. Clara gripped the iron railing and let the cold bite into her palms. Think clearly. You must be the sister. Clara turned. A woman stood behind her, wrapped in furs despite the mild afternoon. She was perhaps 50, with sharp features and eyes the color of winter ice. Her smile revealed too many teeth. Baroness Hilda von Trempf. I was your dear Emma's neighbor in the East Wing. Such a tragedy. Such a dreadful, senseless tragedy. Did you know her well? Oh, we talked every day. She was so lonely, poor lamb. Cried herself to sleep most nights. Clara's fingers tightened on the railing. Emma never cried. Perhaps not before, but this place changes people. She wept and wept, especially after your letters stopped coming. My letters never stopped. I wrote every week. The Baroness tilted her head, a gesture of theatrical confusion. How strange. She told me you had abandoned her here, that you were too busy with your factories and your figures to visit your own sister. The lie was so enormous that Clara could not speak. Of course, the Baroness continued, Dr. Richter said the letters only upset her. He took them away. For her own good, you understand. Clara stared at the woman before her. The sympathetic smile, the innocent eyes, the venom wrapped in silk. Thank you for your concern, Baroness. I find I need fresh air. Of course, dear. Grief makes us all a little mad. Clara walked away before she could say something unforgivable. That night in her hotel room in the village, Clara spread Emma's blue silk dress across the bed. The gaslight flickered, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Outside, snow had begun to fall, a lacework of ice against the window. She found her sewing scissors. Her hands trembled as she cut the threads, fresh threads, threads that Emma had never sewn. The lining parted. Inside, pressed flat against the silk, was a folded sheet of paper. Emma's handwriting, but the words made no sense. The mirror lies, the lion door. He counts us on Wednesdays. Run, Clara, run while you can. Clara read it 3 times, her sister's precise script, but the message of a madwoman. Then she saw the final line. Different ink, a shaking hand. They killed me. The paper fell from Clara's fingers. Outside, the snow continued to fall, white as a shroud, silent as a grave. Clara returned to the sanatorium at dawn. The morning mist clung to the valley like a bridal veil, obscuring the jagged peaks that loomed above the Belvedere. She had not slept. Emma's message burned against her chest, tucked inside her corset where no one could find it. They killed me. The words had echoed through her mind all night, punctuated by the howling of Alpine wind against her hotel window. She had considered going to the police. But what would she say? My dead sister left a cryptic note sewn into her dress. She mentioned lions and mirrors and Wednesdays. Please arrest the most respected physician in Switzerland. No, she needed proof. She needed answers. The reception hall gleamed with polished marble and morning light. A nurse looked up from her ledger as Clara approached. I wish to see Dr. Richter immediately. The doctor is conducting his morning rounds. Perhaps you could wait in the— I will not wait! Clara's voice cut through the hushed atmosphere like a blade. Several patients in the sitting room turned to stare. She did not care. Let them look. Let them see a woman who refused to be managed. The nurse's face hardened. Please, follow me. They walked through corridors that smelled of beeswax and chloroform, past doors marked with brass numbers, past windows that overlooked manicured gardens where women in white walked in slow circles, their faces blank as paper. Dr. Richter stood in a treatment room examining a young woman's pulse. He looked up as Clara entered, and his expression flickered from annoyance to that practiced warmth she was beginning to hate. Miss Wessel, what a pleasant surprise. I found something in my sister's belongings. Clara pulled the note from her corset and thrust it toward him. Let him explain. Let him try. Richter took the paper. His eyes moved across Emma's words. For one instant, just one, Clara saw something crack behind his mask. Fear, recognition, guilt. Then it vanished. My poor Miss Wessel. He shook his head slowly. This is precisely what I tried to spare you from. Spare me? Your sister's delusions, her paranoid fantasies. This note is evidence of severe hysteria. The lions she mentions were likely hallucinations. The counting? A manifestation of obsessive mania. Clara snatched the paper back. She wrote that someone killed her. That is not a delusion. It is precisely a delusion. Richter's voice remained calm, patient, infuriatingly gentle. She believed she was being persecuted. She believed everyone around her was conspiring against her, including you. That is a lie. Is it? Richter moved closer. His cologne smelled of sandalwood and something sweeter. Did she not write that you abandoned her? That you stopped writing?
Because you took her letters.
Because her letters were filled with accusations and madness. We protected you both. Clara stepped back. Her heel caught on the carpet. She stumbled, and Richter's hand shot out to steady her arm. His grip was firm. Too firm. Miss Wessel. He did not let go. I understand your grief. I understand your need to find meaning in tragedy. But your sister died of natural causes, and your insistence otherwise suggests a worrying instability. Clara tried to pull away. His fingers tightened. Let me go. I think you should stay with us for a few days, for observation. The journey from Munich was long. The altitude affects the nerves. I said, let me go. Richter smiled. It was the smile of a man who had never been refused. Nurse Brenner. The door opened. 2 sanatorium attendants entered, broad-shouldered men in white coats. Behind them stood the nurse from reception, her face impassive. Miss Wessel is experiencing an acute episode of hysteric agitation. Richter finally released her arm. Please escort her to the examination room for evaluation. Clara's blood turned to ice. You cannot do this. I am a Prussian citizen. I have solicitors. I have rights. You have grief. And grief, Miss Wessel, can destroy the mind. I have seen it countless times. Women who cannot accept loss, who invent conspiracies to explain the inexplicable, who become dangers to themselves and others. The attendants moved closer. I will scream. Many patients do. The walls here are very thick. They took her arms. Clara struggled, but they were strong, and she had not eaten since yesterday. And the world was tilting sideways in a way that made her wonder if perhaps she truly was going mad. The examination room was small and white and smelled of carbolic acid. They pressed her into a chair. A nurse took her pulse while Richter dictated notes to an assistant. Pupils dilated, pulse elevated, signs of severe agitation consistent with hereditary hysteric tendency. Patient exhibits paranoid ideation and resistance to treatment. I am not your patient. You are now. Richter leaned close. His breath was warm against her ear. Your sister thought she was clever too. She asked questions. She searched where she should not have searched. She wrote letters to people who might have believed her. Clara went still. What did you say? I said she was unwell, just like you. He straightened and addressed the nurse. Prepare a sedative. She will need rest before her transfer to the East Wing. The East Wing, where Emma had lived, where Emma had died. Clara forced herself to breathe. Panic would not save her. Only cunning, only patience. Very well. Her voice came out steady, calm, dead. If you insist on this farce, I will cooperate. But I want my belongings, my clothing, my books. If I am to be imprisoned, I wish to be comfortable. Richter studied her face, searching for deception. Clara made herself a mirror, blank, passive, defeated. A reasonable request. Nurse, see to it. And Miss Wessel, welcome to the Belvedere. They led her through the East Wing corridor, past doors painted soothing white, past windows that showed the same mountain view that Emma had seen every day for 3 months,
passed the scent of lavender and antiseptic and something else, something that clung to the walls like old sorrow. A man stood in the corridor ahead. He wore a patient's robe, but he held himself like a soldier, tall, lean, with dark hair touched by gray at the temples and a scar that curved above his left brow like a crescent moon.
His eyes met Clara's as she passed, and she saw in them something she had not expected. Warning. He shook his head, a tiny movement, almost invisible. Do not resist. Not yet. Then the attendant shoved her forward, and the moment was gone. Her room was small but comfortable. A bed with a brass frame, a window that overlooked the garden, a washstand with a porcelain basin. The door locked from the outside, she noticed. No key on this side. She was a prisoner now, just like Emma. Clara stood at the window and watched the sun climb higher over the peaks. The snow from last night still clung to the fir trees, transforming them into ghostly sentinels. Somewhere below, a woman screamed once, then fell silent. Hours passed. A nurse brought lunch on a tray, soup, bread, water. Clara ate nothing. She could not forget Richter's words. He counts us on Wednesdays. What did Emma mean? Evening came. The shadows lengthened. Clara lit the candle on her nightstand and began to examine her prison. The wallpaper was floral, yellow roses on cream. The plaster beneath was solid. The window opened only a few inches before catching on an iron bracket. The floorboards creaked in the center, but were silent near the walls. Then she saw the bed. Something was wrong with the wall above it. The paint was scratched, as if someone had clawed at it repeatedly. Clara climbed onto the mattress and held the candle closer. Letters. Someone had scratched letters into the plaster with their fingernails. Dyer loaned, or Heesned, Threra's hand trembled so violently that wax dripped onto her wrist. The pain was distant, unreal. Emma had written this. Emma had left her a map. The diary. The lion door. He poisoned the water. And somewhere in this beautiful prison, the truth was waiting to be found. Midnight painted the sanatorium in shades of silver and shadow. Clara lay beneath her blanket, fully dressed, her eyes fixed on the thin strip of light beneath her door. She had feigned sleep when the nurse brought her evening sedative, pressing the bitter pill against her cheek until the woman left, then spitting it into her pillowcase. The taste lingered still, chalky and chemical. The lion door. The diary. He poisoned the water. Emma's clues circled through her mind like ravens around a corpse. She had searched her memory for lions. The sanatorium's crest featured an eagle. The garden statues were nymphs and cherubs. But somewhere in this building, a lion waited. Footsteps echoed in the corridor. A nurse making rounds. Clara counted the seconds between each pass. 12 minutes. The woman was methodical, predictable. On the fourth round, the footsteps paused outside Clara's door. A key scraped in the lock. Clara pressed her eyes shut, forced her breathing to slow. The door creaked open. Light swept across her face. Still sleeping. Good. The door closed. The lock clicked. Footsteps retreated. Clara waited until the sound faded completely. Then she rose. The window offered no escape, but the door was another matter. She had noticed during her afternoon imprisonment that the hinges were old, brass, not iron, and the gap beneath the frame was wide enough to slip a hairpin through. She had 3 hairpins left. Emma had taught her this trick when they were girls, picking the lock to their father's study to steal chocolate from his desk drawer. The memory ached like a bruise. The first pin bent. The second snapped. The third found purchase. The lock surrendered with a soft click. Clara eased the door open and stepped into the corridor. Moonlight filtered through tall windows, casting pale rectangles on the marble floor. The air smelled of carbolic acid and dying flowers. She moved toward the administrative wing, staying close to the walls where the floorboards did not creak. Past the nurse's station, empty now. Past the sitting room where ghostly furniture crouched beneath dust covers. Past a door marked treatment room that she did not want to contemplate. Then she saw it, a door at the end of the corridor, half hidden in shadow. The handle was bronze, shaped like a lion's head, its mane flowing into the frame like frozen flame. The lion door. Clara's heart pounded so loudly she feared it would wake the entire building. She pressed her palm against the cold metal and pushed. The door swung inward. Richter's private study stretched before her, larger than she had expected, lined with bookshelves and glass cabinets full of medical instruments. A massive desk dominated the center, its surface cluttered with papers and leather journals. The smell of sandalwood and ink hung heavy in the air. She had perhaps 10 minutes before the next patrol, perhaps less. Clara began with the desk drawers, patient files alphabetically arranged, correspondence with pharmaceutical suppliers, a photograph of Richter shaking hands with a man in aristocratic dress. Then she found the ledger. It was bound in black leather, unmarked, hidden beneath a false bottom in the lowest drawer. Clara's fingers trembled as she opened it. Names. Dates. Numbers. Countess Elsa von Stern, 200,000 francs. Transferred. Deceased. Widow Maria Hoffman, 150,000 francs. Transferred. Deceased. The list continued for pages. Dozens of names, dozens of fortunes, all transferred, all deceased. And there, near the bottom of the most recent page, Emma Wessel, 40,000 annual income. Resisted, resolved. Clara pressed her fist against her mouth to silence the sob that clawed at her throat. Resolved. As if her sister's murder were merely a business complication. She turned more pages, found notations about forged wills, bribed notaries, cooperative physicians in other cities who signed death certificates without questions, found references to someone called the Baroness, who received monthly payments for services rendered. The spider's web was vast, and Clara was caught in the center. A creak from somewhere below. Voices. Clara froze. She could not take the ledger. Its absence would be noticed immediately. But she could take something smaller, something that would prove what she had found. She rifled through the cabinet behind the desk. Medical supplies, bottles of tinctures and powders. And there, tucked behind a row of amber vials, a small glass container with a handwritten label. Digitalis. Lethal dosage. The poison that stopped hearts. The poison that left no trace. Clara slipped the bottle into her corset next to Emma's note. 2 pieces of evidence. 2 weapons in a war she was only beginning to understand. The voices grew louder. Footsteps on the stairs. She scanned the room for another exit. The windows were barred. The door was the only way. She would have to move quickly, silently, and pray that the darkness would hide her. Then she saw the rug. It was Persian, expensive, covering most of the floor. But one corner was slightly raised, as if it had been moved and replaced carelessly. Clara lifted it. A trap door. The ring was cold against her palm. She pulled, and the door rose on oiled hinges. A ladder descended into blackness. No choice now. The voices were in the corridor. Clara climbed down into the dark. The cellar was tiny, little more than a closet carved into the foundation. Her candle, hastily lit, revealed shelves lined with personal effects, jewelry boxes, bundles of letters tied with ribbon. And stacked against the far wall, leather-bound journals in every color. Diaries. The diaries of dead women. Clara's hands shook as she searched the spines. Blue, green, burgundy, black. Emma's had been crimson. Clara remembered it clearly, a gift for her 18th birthday. There, third shelf from the bottom. She pulled it free and opened to the first page. Emma's handwriting, Emma's voice. Day 8. Dr. Richter is so kind. The Baroness says I'm fortunate to be here. Clara flipped to the final entry. 3 days before Emma's death. I understand everything now. Richter forges diagnoses. The Baroness reports every word we speak. They want my inheritance. If I die, Clara receives everything. They will not stop. A tear fell on the page, blurring the ink. Above her, footsteps crossed the study floor. Richter's voice, muffled but recognizable. I told you to check the archive. Light swept through the trapdoor opening. Clara pressed herself against the wall behind a stack of hat boxes. The beam passed inches from her face. She could smell dust and old perfume and her own fear. Empty. Check her room. The light retreated. Footsteps moved away. Clara exhaled. Then a hand closed over her shoulder. She nearly screamed. Another hand clamped over her mouth, firm but not cruel. Quiet. A man's voice, low and urgent. It is Lentz. Follow me. The soldier from the corridor, the one who had warned her with his eyes. He released her and moved toward the far wall. His fingers found a seam in the stone that Clara had not noticed. A door swung open, revealing a passage beyond. The servants' tunnel. Richter does not know it exists. Clara gathered Emma's diary and followed him into the darkness. The passage smelled of damp earth and forgotten years. Their footsteps echoed softly against ancient stone. Why are you helping me? Because I have waited 2 years to destroy him. He glanced back, his scarred face illuminated by her candle. And because my sister died in that room too. The abandoned greenhouse stood at the edge of the sanatorium grounds, its glass panels frosted with neglect. Clara huddled against the iron frame, her breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. Outside, the first pale light of dawn crept over the mountains, painting the snow in shades of rose and amber. Inside, frost clung to dead vines like frozen tears. Captain Maximilian Lentz sat across from her, his back against a rusted planter. In the gray light, the scar above his brow appeared deeper, more savage. He had not spoken since leading her through the servants' tunnel, through a forgotten cellar door, across the frozen garden to this refuge. Emma's diary lay between them like a confession. Your sister. Clara's voice was hoarse.
You said she died here.
Marta. He did not look at her. She arrived 18 months before your Emma. Nervous exhaustion, the family physician called it. She needed rest.
What happened?
Lentz was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was flat, emotionless, the voice of a man who had told this story to himself 1,000 times. She wrote to me, letters full of strange fears. She said the doctor watched her too closely. She said the Baroness asked too many questions about our family finances. I thought it was the illness speaking. He picked up a shard of broken pottery and turned it between his fingers. Then the letters stopped. A week later, I received a telegram. Heart failure. She was 26 years old and had never been ill a day in her life. Clara thought of Emma's face, her laugh, the way she had danced at the Kramer ball, spinning until her skirts flew like wings. I came here 4 months ago. Lentz continued. I told them I suffered from nervous disorders after my military service. They believed me. Men of rank are rarely questioned. You have been watching, gathering evidence. I have been waiting. He finally met her eyes. For someone else. Someone they would not dismiss as a madman or a grief-stricken brother. Someone with resources, with connections. Someone like me. Yes. The word hung between them. Clara understood now. She was not merely a victim. She was a weapon. Why should I trust you? Her fingers closed around the diary. You could be working for Richter. This could be another trap. Lentz reached into his coat. For a moment, Clara tensed, ready to flee. But he withdrew only a photograph, creased and worn from handling. A young woman with dark hair and laughing eyes. The resemblance was unmistakable. Marta wanted to be a painter. His thumb traced the edge of the image. She used to say the light in Vienna was too gray. She wanted to see Italy, the Mediterranean. She never saw anything except these mountains. Clara took the photograph, looked at the face of another stolen sister, handed it back. I believe you. The morning bell rang across the grounds. Patients would be waking now. Nurses would be making rounds. And in her empty room, someone would soon notice that Clara Vessel had vanished. I cannot return, Clara said. They will drug me, lock me away. I have perhaps hours before Richter realizes I found his archive. Then we must move quickly. Lentz rose, brushing frost from his coat. The annual masquerade ball is in 3 days. Donors, journalists, officials from Zurich. If we can expose him publicly, he will have nowhere to hide. 3 days. She looked down at Emma's diary. We need more than a diary and a bottle of poison. We need witnesses. The Baroness. Clara's jaw tightened at the name. She is his creature. She spied on my sister, reported every word. She is his creature because she fears him. Lentz moved toward the greenhouse door. Fear can be redirected. Clara gathered the diary and followed him into the cold morning light. The sanatorium's breakfast room hummed with the clinking of porcelain and murmured conversation. Clara entered through the servants' entrance, wearing a housemaid's uniform that Lentz had procured from an unlocked storage closet. The white cap covered her hair. The downcast eyes covered her fury. She spotted the Baroness immediately. Hilda von Trampf sat at her usual table by the window, picking at a soft-boiled egg with silver tongs.
Her furs were draped across an empty chair. Her expression was one of practiced boredom. Clara approached with a coffee pot. "More coffee, Baroness?" The Baroness did not look up. "Yes, yes, and tell the kitchen that this egg is overcooked." Clara poured slowly, watching the dark liquid swirl in the porcelain cup. "I heard something strange last night, Baroness, about the archive beneath Dr. Richter's study."
The Baroness went still. Her hand, reaching for the cup, froze in midair. "I beg your pardon?" "The archive." Clara kept her voice light, conversational. "Where he keeps the diaries, the ledgers, the records of all those generous donations." Now the Baroness looked up. Her eyes met Clara's, and recognition flared in their icy depths. "You?" "Me." Clara set down the coffee pot and sat in the empty chair, pushing aside the furs with deliberate carelessness. "You cannot be here," the Baroness hissed. "They are searching for you. Richter has offered a reward." "How flattering." Clara smiled, a smile she had learned from watching her father negotiate with bankers who tried to cheat him. "Tell me, Baroness, how much does he pay you to spy on dying women?" The older woman's face contorted with something between fear and outrage. "How dare you? I am a guest here, a patient. I have done nothing wrong." "You are listed in his ledger." Clara leaned closer. "Monthly payments for services rendered." "Would you like me to describe those services? Or shall I simply share the ledger with the police inspector who will be attending the masquerade?" The Baroness's hand trembled against her coffee cup. "You have no ledger. You have nothing." "I have everything. And I have 3 days to decide what to do with it." Clara rose, straightening her maid's cap with exaggerated care. "Think carefully, Baroness. Richter protects himself. He does not protect his tools." She walked away without looking back. Her room had been ransacked. Clara stood in the doorway, surveying the destruction. The mattress was slashed, spilling horsehair and cotton. The wardrobe doors hung open, her few dresses torn from their hooks. The wash basin lay shattered on the floor, its porcelain fragments scattered like broken teeth. They had found Emma's diary missing. They knew she had been to the archive. "Miss Wessel," Richter's voice came from behind her. Clara turned slowly. He stood in the corridor, flanked by 2 attendants. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with cold fire. "You have been very busy." He stepped into the room, glass crunching beneath his polished shoes. "Searching through private files, stealing property, disturbing the other patients with wild accusations." "I found your archive." Clara forced her voice to remain steady. "Your ledger, your poison. You found nothing, because there is nothing to find." He moved closer. Clara backed against the window, the iron latch pressed into her spine. "Your sister was a mad woman." He spoke softly now, almost gently. "She died because her mind destroyed her body. And you, I fear, suffer from the same affliction. My sister was murdered by you for her money." "Such delusions." Richter shook his head. "Tomorrow the cantonal medical inspector will examine you. He will confirm my diagnosis. And after that, you will be transferred to the state asylum in Zurich." "You will spend the rest of your life in a padded cell, screaming accusations that no one will ever hear." Clara's nails dug into her palms.
You will not silence me.
My dear Miss Wessel. He smiled, and the smile was more terrifying than any threat. Your sister thought exactly the same thing. She was buried within a week. He turned to the attendants. Secure her. No food, no visitors, and double the sedative dosage. She clearly requires intensive treatment. They seized her arms. Clara struggled, but their grip was iron. Richter paused at the door. The masquerade is in 3 days. By then, you will be nothing but another cautionary tale about women who refused to accept their natural limitations. The door closed, the lock clicked, and somewhere in the building, Clara heard the Baroness's high, brittle laughter echoing down the corridor. The sedative tasted like bitter almonds and betrayal. Clara let the liquid pool beneath her tongue as Nurse Brenner held the cup to her lips. She had learned this trick from watching the other patients. Swallow visibly. Let the eyes glaze. Wait. Then spit into the pillow when the door closes. 3 times they had drugged her. 3 times she had fooled them. But her strength was fading. 2 days without proper food. 2 nights without sleep. And somewhere beyond her locked door, the masquerade preparations continued. She could hear servants carrying crates down the corridor, musicians tuning instruments in the distant ballroom. The sanatorium was transforming itself into a palace of illusions. Lentz had not come. Clara pressed her forehead against the cold window glass. Perhaps they had caught him. Perhaps he had abandoned her. Perhaps she had imagined him entirely, a phantom conjured by grief and desperation. The lion door, the diary. He counts us on Wednesdays. Today was Wednesday. Clara straightened. Emma's words echoed through her sluggish mind with sudden clarity. He counts us on Wednesdays. She had assumed the phrase referred to patient inspections, routine medical examinations. But what if it meant something else? What if Wednesday was when Richter visited his archive? She pressed her ear against the door. Footsteps passed occasionally, but the corridor seemed quieter than usual. The staff was distracted by masquerade preparations. Security would be focused on the public areas, not the private rooms of the East Wing. Clara examined her prison with new eyes. The door was solid oak, impossible to breach. The window opened only inches before catching on its bracket, but the bracket itself was old, corroded by decades of mountain air. And the window ledge extended beyond the glass, forming a narrow stone shelf that connected to the next room. She had seen women walk that ledge. In her childhood home in Munich, the servants had used similar paths to move between rooms when the family was sleeping. It required balance, courage, and a willingness to fall. Clara had always possessed all 3. The bracket surrendered after 20 minutes of patient work. She used the handle of her hairbrush as a lever, twisting the corroded screws until they pulled free from the stone. The window swung open, admitting a blast of frozen air that stole her breath. Below her, the garden lay 50 feet down. Above, the roof rose in a steep slope of slate tiles. Before her, the ledge extended perhaps 12 feet to the next window. 12 feet, 4 steps, 1 chance. Clara climbed onto the sill. The wind tore at her dress, plastering the thin fabric against her legs. She pressed her back against the stone wall and began to move. 1 step, 2. Her fingers found cracks in the masonry, tiny handholds that kept her anchored against the gusting gale. Do not look down, Do not think. Just move. The third step brought her to a drain pipe. She gripped it, feeling the cold metal bite into her palms. The fourth step reached the neighboring window. Locked. Clara's heart plummeted. She hung there, suspended between sky and earth, with nowhere to go. Her fingers were numb, her legs trembled. The wind howled like a living thing, eager to claim her. Then she saw the latch. It was a simple mechanism, visible through the gap between frame and glass. A hook that could be lifted with something thin and flat, something like a hairpin. Clara had one pin left, the last survivor of her lock-picking arsenal. She wedged her shoulder against the window frame and worked the pin through the gap. Her fingers shook so violently that she nearly dropped it twice. The wind screamed. The ledge crumbled beneath her heels. The latch lifted. Clara tumbled through the window and landed on a carpet that smelled of lavender and dust. Baroness Hilda von Trampf stood in the center of the room, frozen in the act of fastening her corset. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish pulled from water. "You." The older woman's voice was barely a whisper. "How did you—" "Through the window." Clara rose, brushing glass fragments from her dress. "You really should lock it more carefully." The Baroness backed toward the door. Clara moved faster, positioning herself between the woman and her escape. "Scream if you wish." Clara kept her voice pleasant, conversational. "But if you do, I will tell Dr. Richter exactly what I found in his archive, including the letters you wrote to the families of your victims, the ones where you described their final moments in such touching detail." The Baroness went pale. "I wrote no letters." "You wrote dozens." Clara stepped closer. "To sisters, to daughters, to elderly parents who had entrusted their loved ones to this place. You told them their relatives died peacefully, gratefully. You made them believe the deaths were natural." "I did not know." The Baroness's composure cracked, revealing something raw and frightened beneath. "In the beginning, I thought I was helping. Richter said they were suffering. He said death was a mercy." "And the money?" "What money?" "The inheritances, the life insurance, the family fortunes that somehow ended up in Richter's Swiss accounts." The Baroness sank onto her bed. Her face had aged 10 years in 10 seconds. "I never saw money. He paid me to watch, to listen, to report what the patients said. He told me I was helping with their treatment, that their delusions needed to be understood before they could be cured." Clara knelt before her. She took the Baroness's trembling hands in her own. "You know the truth now. You have known it for years. How many women died while you watched?" A tear traced down the Baroness's powdered cheek. 17. Her voice cracked. 17 women. All wealthy, all alone, all dead within 6 months of arriving. "My sister was 18. "Yes." The Baroness met Clara's eyes. "Your sister was different. She fought back. She wrote letters. She tried to warn the authorities." Richter was furious. "He killed her. He had her killed." The Baroness gripped Clara's hands with sudden, desperate strength. "There is a man, an orderly named Gruber. He handles the difficult cases, the patients who resist. He makes their deaths look natural." Clara's blood ran cold. "Where is Gruber now?" "Preparing for the masquerade. He always works the large events,
in case any patients become troublesome. Clara rose. Her mind was racing, calculating, planning. The masquerade is tomorrow night. I need access to the ballroom. I need to reach the guests before Richter can silence me. Impossible. The Baroness shook her head. Security will be everywhere. Richter is expecting you to try something. Then I need a distraction. The Baroness was silent for a long moment. Then something shifted in her eyes. Fear retreated. Resolve advanced. I have been a coward for too long. She rose, squaring her shoulders beneath her half-fastened corset.
I have watched innocent women die and told myself I had no choice. Your sister died because of my silence. Will you help me? The Baroness walked to her wardrobe and withdrew a gown of midnight blue silk. A masquerade costume, Clara realized, complete with a feathered mask that would cover half the wearer's face. Tomorrow night. The Baroness pressed the gown into Clara's arms. I will give you your distraction, and God willing, I will finally do something worthy of the title I carry. A knock at the door. Both women froze. Baroness? A nurse's voice. Is everything all right? I thought I heard voices. Clara dove beneath the bed. The dust made her want to sneeze. She pressed her face into her sleeve and prayed. Just talking to myself, dear. The Baroness's voice was perfectly composed. The altitude affects the mind so strangely. A pause, then footsteps retreating. Clara emerged from beneath the bed, brushing cobwebs from her hair. Tomorrow night. She clutched the blue gown against her chest. The masquerade begins at 8. Be ready. The Baroness's smile was thin but genuine. And Clara, for what it is worth, I am sorry about Emma. The words meant nothing, but Clara nodded anyway. She had work to do. The ballroom blazed with 1,000 candles. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across silk gowns and tailored evening coats. Masks of every description filled the room. Venetian half-faces in gold and silver, elaborate animal constructions with real feathers, simple black dominoes that hid nothing but the eyes. An orchestra played Strauss in the gallery above, and couples whirled across the polished floor in waltzes that seemed to defy gravity. Clara watched from behind a marble pillar, her heart hammering against her ribs. The midnight blue gown fit perfectly, as if the Baroness had measured her in her sleep. The feathered mask covered her face from forehead to cheekbones, leaving only her mouth and chin exposed. She looked like a stranger. She felt like a ghost. Richter stood near the grand staircase, receiving guests with practiced charm. He wore no mask, only an immaculate white tie and a smile that revealed nothing. Beside him, a man in inspector's uniform nodded at whatever flattery was being dispensed. The cantonal medical inspector. The man who would certify Clara as insane tomorrow morning. She scanned the crowd for Lentz. 2 days without contact. 2 days of wondering whether he was alive, dead, or simply waiting for the right moment. The greenhouse had been empty when she checked this afternoon. No message, no sign. Perhaps she was truly alone. The Baroness appeared at her elbow, resplendent in crimson satin and a mask shaped like a phoenix rising from flames. "The journalist from Zurich is here." She spoke without moving her lips. "The tall man near the champagne table. He writes for the Neue Zürcher Zeitung." Clara located him. Middle-aged, balding, with ink stains visible on his cuffs despite his formal attire. A man who worked for a living. A man who might listen.
I need proof, Clara murmured. My word against Richter's means nothing. Then provide proof. The Baroness pressed something into Clara's palm, a key, the archive. Richter will be occupied for at least an hour with the reception line. His study will be empty. Clara stared at the key, cold metal against her skin. How did you obtain this? I have been his creature for 3 years. The Baroness's smile was bitter beneath her phoenix mask. One learns where the spare keys are hidden. She melted into the crowd before Clara could respond. The corridor leading to Richter's study was deserted. Everyone who mattered was at the ball, drinking champagne and pretending that the screams, sometimes heard from the East Wing, were merely the wind. Clara moved quickly, her silk skirts rustling against the marble floor. The lion door waited in shadow. The key turned smoothly. Clara slipped inside and closed the door behind her.
Moonlight filtered through the barred windows, illuminating the familiar landscape of Richter's domain. The desk, the cabinets, the Persian rug that concealed the trapdoor to his secret archive. She lifted the rug, found the iron ring, pulled. The ladder descended into darkness. Clara did not bother with a candle this time. She knew exactly what she needed. The black ledger. The evidence of 17 murders, 18 with Emma. Names, dates, amounts transferred. Everything a journalist would need to destroy Richter forever. Her fingers found the shelf where the ledger had rested. Empty. Clara's stomach dropped. She searched the neighboring shelves, knocking over jewelry boxes and bundles of letters. The diaries were still there, including Emma's crimson volume, but the ledger was gone. Richter had moved it. He knew someone had been here. A sound from above. The creak of the study door opening. Clara pressed herself against the cellar wall, barely breathing. Light swept through the trapdoor opening. "Miss Wessel!" Richter's voice echoed down the ladder. "I know you are there!" The Baroness's performance was convincing, but she has always been a poor liar when properly motivated. Footsteps on the ladder, descending. Clara's hand closed around a heavy candlestick on the nearest shelf. Brass, solid, a weapon if she needed one. Richter appeared at the bottom of the ladder. He carried a lantern that threw wild shadows across his face. Behind the civilized mask, something ancient and predatory watched her. "You have caused me considerable trouble." He set the lantern on a shelf. "The Baroness required extensive persuasion before she revealed your location. I fear she may not recover."
What did you do to her?
"What I do to all troublesome women," he smiled. "I cured her." Clara raised the candlestick. "Stay away from me." "Or what? You will strike me? Here, in my own sanatorium, surrounded by staff loyal to me alone?" Richter spread his hands. "Even if you escaped this cellar, where would you go? The police believe you are mad. Your family believes you are grief-stricken. No one will listen to accusations from a hysterical woman." "The journalist will listen." "Herr Müller?" Richter laughed. "He is my guest. I invited him personally. Tomorrow he will write a glowing profile of the Belvedere and its pioneering treatments. Your accusations, if you manage to make them, will be dismissed as proof of your condition."
Clara's arm trembled. The candlestick suddenly felt very small. "You murdered my sister."
"I freed your sister from her inheritance, from her expectations. From the prison of her gender. Richter stepped closer. She should have been grateful. Instead, she fought. She wrote letters. She forced me to take measures I would rather have avoided. You poisoned her with digitalis. I administered a medical treatment that her constitution could not withstand. A tragic outcome, but entirely natural. Richter's eyes gleamed in the lantern light, just as your outcome will be tragic, but natural. The unstable sister who could not accept her loss, who fell from a window during a psychotic episode, who died as she lived, consumed by delusions. He lunged. Clara swung the candlestick. It connected with his shoulder, spinning him sideways. She ran for the ladder, but his hand caught her ankle and she fell hard against the stone floor. Pain exploded through her ribs. She kicked backward, felt her heel connect with something soft. Richter grunted and released her. She scrambled up the ladder, through the trapdoor, across the study, into the corridor. Behind her, Richter was shouting, calling for orderlies, for Gruber, for anyone who could stop the madwoman fleeing toward the ballroom. Clara burst through the doors. The music stopped. 1,000 masked faces turned toward her. "Ladies and gentlemen," her voice echoed through the sudden silence, "this man is a murderer. He kills wealthy women for their inheritances. I have proof." Richter appeared behind her, his face composed into an expression of sorrowful concern. "Please forgive this intrusion." He addressed the crowd with practiced calm. "This poor woman is a patient suffering from acute hysteria. She requires immediate treatment." "He killed 18 women," Clara shouted, "including my sister." "Including Captain Lentz's sister?" Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The journalist was writing in a small notebook. "There is no Captain Lentz," Richter said smoothly. "Another delusion, another symptom of her tragic condition." "I am here." The voice came from the gallery above. Lentz stood at the railing, dressed in evening clothes, a black domino mask pushed up onto his forehead. In his hands he held a leather-bound book, a black ledger. "I took it from your safe 3 days ago." Lentz's voice carried across the silent ballroom. "Before you moved the other evidence. It documents 17 murders, 17 women, millions of francs." He threw the ledger. It arced through the air and landed at the journalist's feet. "Seize him!" Richter screamed. "He is mad! They are both mad!" But the guests were already backing away. The medical inspector was reading the ledger with widening eyes. And somewhere in the crowd, a woman began to scream. "My daughter!" She pointed at Richter with a shaking finger. "My daughter was here. You told me she died of pneumonia." Another voice joined the first, then another. The edifice was crumbling. The truth was rising. And Clara Vessel stood in the ruins, watching her enemy's empire fall. Chaos consumed the ballroom like wildfire through dry timber. Guests surged toward the exits, their masquerade finery tangling in the crush. Women screamed. Men shouted contradictory orders. The orchestra abandoned their instruments and fled through a service door. Only the candles remained steady, their flames wavering in the turbulent air like witnesses, unwilling to look away. Clara stood frozen in the eye of the storm, watching Richter's face transform. The cultivated mask had shattered. Beneath it was something she had glimpsed only in shadows: the predator, the calculator, the architect of 18 deaths,
who had never expected his foundation to crumble. His eyes darted from Lentz in the gallery to the inspector clutching the black ledger to Clara herself standing between him and the grand staircase. Then he moved. Not toward Clara, not toward escape, toward the inspector. "That document is stolen property!" Richter seized the ledger, attempting to wrench it from the older man's hands. "It contains fabricated evidence, a forgery created by disturbed patients." The inspector held firm. "Dr. Richter." His voice carried the weight of 30 years of judicial authority. "I have seen enough falsified documents in my career to recognize genuine records. These entries bear your personal seal, your signature, your handwriting. I demand a proper hearing."
Richter's composure cracked further, revealing desperation beneath. "This is a conspiracy. These people are mentally unbalanced." "Then you will have ample opportunity to prove that in court." Two uniformed officers appeared from somewhere in the crowd. They had been guests, Clara realized. Security personnel invited to ensure the masquerade proceeded smoothly. Now they were witnesses to something far more significant. "Friedrich Richter," the inspector's voice was formal, almost ceremonial. "You are detained for questioning regarding the suspicious deaths of 17 patients under your care. You will surrender yourself to these officers immediately." For a moment, Clara thought it was over. The officers approached. Richter's shoulders sagged. Victory, hard-won and blood-bought, seemed to settle over the ruined ballroom like gentle snow. Then Richter pulled a scalpel from his evening coat. The blade caught the candlelight as he seized the nearest woman, an elderly dowager in silver brocade, whose screams echoed off the vaulted ceiling. He pressed the surgical steel against her throat, backing toward the service corridor. "Stay back!" His voice had lost all pretense of civilization. "Anyone approaches and she dies!" Clara's breath caught. The dowager's eyes rolled with terror, her diamond necklace trembling against her papery skin. The officers froze, their hands raised in useless supplication. "Dr. Richter," the inspector spoke carefully, "this accomplishes nothing. Release her." "It accomplishes everything," Richter continued, backing toward the corridor. "It accomplishes my freedom. My life's work will not be destroyed by hysterical women and vengeful soldiers." He had almost reached the door. Clara looked up at the gallery. Lentz was gone. She scanned the ballroom frantically, searching for the military bearing, the scarred face, the man who had waited 2 years for this moment. He had vanished into the panicked crowd. No, not vanished. She spotted him near the service corridor, moving through shadows with the silent precision of a trained hunter. He was circling behind Richter, approaching from the direction the doctor could not see. Clara had to keep Richter distracted. "Doctor," she stepped forward, her voice cutting through the chaos. "You said something to me when I arrived. Do you remember?" Richter's eyes snapped to her, the scalpel pressed harder against the dowager's throat. "Stay back, Miss Vessel." "You said the mountains have a way of stripping away pretense." Clara took another step. "You said the true self emerges, whether one wishes it or not." "I said many things. None of them matter now." "But they do matter." Another step. "Because you were right." The mountains stripped away my pretense, my grief, my fear. They showed me exactly who I needed to become. Lentz was 10 feet behind Richter now. 8, 6. And who is that? Richter's voice dripped with contempt even as sweat beaded on his forehead. A crusading heroine? A noble avenger? You are nothing but a dead woman's sister, a footnote in my legacy.
I am Clara Vessel. She met his eyes with absolute calm. And I am the woman who destroyed you. Lentz struck. His arm wrapped around Richter's throat from behind. The doctor gasped, releasing the dowager, who collapsed into the arms of the nearest officer. The scalpel clattered against the marble floor, but Richter was not finished. He twisted, impossibly fast for a man of his age, and drove his elbow into Lentz's injured side. The captain grunted and stumbled. Richter tore free and ran, not toward the service corridor, but toward the grand staircase, toward Clara. She did not move.
Richter seized her arm, spinning her around, pressing something sharp against her ribs. Another scalpel. Of course he carried more than one. A surgeon always prepared for contingencies. Your sister fought too. His breath was hot against her ear. In the end, she begged. They always beg. Clara felt the blade pierce her gown, a thin line of pain traced along her side. Emma never begged. How would you know? You were not there. I was. I watched the light leave her eyes. I watched her understand that no one was coming, that no one would ever know. I know. Clara reached into her bodice. Her fingers closed around the small glass bottle she had carried since the archive. The bottle labeled in Richter's own hand, Digitalis, lethal dosage. She uncorked it with her thumb and threw the contents over her shoulder into Richter's face. He screamed. The poison splashed into his eyes, his mouth, his open wounds where Lentz's attack had torn his collar. He released Clara, clawing at his face, stumbling backward. "What have you done?" His voice was a shriek now. "What have you done to me?" Clara turned to face him. "I gave you exactly what you gave my sister, and 17 others. Justice." Richter fell. His body convulsed on the marble floor, his heart seizing as the digitalis flooded his system. The guests watched in horror. The officers watched in shock. The inspector watched with something that might have been grim satisfaction. Clara watched until the convulsions stopped. Lentz appeared at her side. Blood seeped from beneath his evening coat where Richter's elbow had found its mark. "You could have let the courts handle him." "The courts would have taken years." Clara's voice was steady. Appeals, delays, expensive lawyers arguing that a distinguished physician could not possibly have committed such crimes. He would have died in comfort while his victims' families died waiting. "And now?" "Now it is finished." She looked down at Richter's body. His eyes were open, staring at the crystalline ceiling he had gazed upon 1,000 times while planning murders. His face was frozen in an expression of absolute disbelief. He had never imagined a woman could defeat him. The inspector approached, his face unreadable. "Miss Wessel, you've just killed a man in front of 200 witnesses." "I have just executed a murderer in front of 200 witnesses." Clara met his gaze without flinching. "Using the same poison he used on my sister and 17 other women. If Swiss law wishes to prosecute me for that, I will answer for my actions." The inspector studied her for a long moment. Swiss law recognizes the defense of necessity, he said finally. Richter was armed. He had taken hostages. He was clearly attempting to flee justice after confessing to multiple murders. Is that what your report will say? It is what happened. The inspector glanced at the body. Whether the specific mechanism of his death requires detailed examination is a matter for the courts to decide. He turned and began directing his officers to secure the scene. Clara's legs finally gave way. Lentz caught her before she hit the floor. "You are wounded." "It is nothing." She pressed her hand against her ribs, felt the warm blood soaking through silk. "Compared to everything else is over." Clara looked at the ballroom, at the shattered chandeliers and scattered masks, at the guests who would never forget what they had witnessed, at the body of the man who had stolen her sister. "No," she whispered.
Everything else is just beginning. Spring arrived in the Alps with the patience of old grief finally releasing its hold. Clara stood at the window of her hotel room in Zurich, watching rain trace silver patterns down the glass. 3 months had passed since the masquerade. 3 months of testimonies, investigations, newspaper headlines that screamed across Europe. The Belvedere Murders, they called it. The Swiss Bluebeard. The Doctor of Death. Richter's name had become synonymous with medical corruption. Parliament had launched inquiries. Sanatoriums across the continent faced new regulations. Families of victims received compensation from the seized assets of the Belvedere estate. Justice, Clara supposed, whatever that word meant now. A knock at the door interrupted her contemplation. "Come in?" Lentz entered, carrying a leather satchel and wearing civilian clothes that still looked foreign on his military frame. The wound in his side had healed cleanly, though he moved with a slight stiffness that might never fully disappear. "The Baroness sent this." He placed the satchel on the bed. "She asked me to deliver it personally." Clara opened the satchel. Inside lay a bundle of letters tied with crimson ribbon. Emma's handwriting covered the envelopes. "Where did she find these?" In Richter's private quarters. The police overlooked them during the initial search. The Baroness discovered them while packing her belongings. Clara untied the ribbon with trembling fingers. The first letter was dated 6 months before Emma's death. "Dearest Clara," she read silently. "The mountains here are beautiful but cold. Dr. Richter speaks kindly, but his eyes watch too closely. I have begun keeping a diary, hidden where no one will find it. Something is wrong in this place. I can feel it in the walls." She set the letter aside. There would be time to read them all. Time to hear Emma's voice again, preserved in ink and paper. Time to mourn properly, now that vengeance no longer consumed her every thought. "The Baroness?" Clara asked. "How is she recovering?" "Slowly." Lentz moved to the window, standing beside her. "Richter's final treatment left permanent damage. She will never fully regain her strength." "But she testified." "Yes, for 3 days." She named every victim she remembered, described every payment she received. The prosecution called her their most valuable witness. And her sentence? 5 years suspended. The judge ruled that her cooperation and her own victimization at Richter's hands warranted leniency. She has returned to Vienna. Her family has disowned her, but she has enough money to live independently. Clara nodded. The Baroness had been complicit. She had watched women die and said nothing. But she had also been trapped, manipulated.
slowly corrupted by a man who understood exactly how to exploit weakness. Forgiveness was too simple a word. Understanding was closer. "What about you?" Clara turned to face Lentz. "What happens to Captain Maximilian Lentz now that his mission is complete?" He was silent for a long moment. Rain continued its patient descent outside the window. "I resigned my commission." His voice was quiet. "The army offered me a promotion, a commendation for distinguished service. I declined." "Why?" "Because Marta would have hated what I became." He met her eyes. "She believed in beauty, in art, in the possibility of goodness. I spent 2 years becoming something cold and calculated, something that could watch and wait and plan revenge without feeling anything." "You felt things," Clara said softly. "I saw it when you spoke of her." "Grief is not feeling. It is the absence of feeling, a hole where something vital used to exist." Clara understood. She had lived inside that hole for months. It had sustained her, fueled her, given her purpose when purpose seemed impossible. But now, with Richter dead and Emma avenged, the hole remained. What filled it? What came after revenge? "I received a letter from my father," she said. "The first direct communication since Emma's funeral. He apologized for not believing me, for trying to have me committed. He wants me to come home." "Will you go?" "Munich was never home. Emma made it bearable. Without her, it is just a house full of memories I cannot face." "Then where?" Clara looked out at the rain-streaked city, at the church spires and university towers, at the lake beyond, gray and restless under the spring storms. Emma wanted to see Italy. The letter she wrote mentioned it. She dreamed of Mediterranean light, of painting on terraces overlooking the sea. She never got there. "You could go in her place?" "I could." Clara turned away from the window. "But going alone feels like running away." "And I have spent too much of my life running toward or away from things. I want to walk for a while, to choose my direction without grief dictating the path." Lentz reached into his coat and withdrew a small object, a locket on a silver chain. He pressed it into Clara's palm. "This belonged to Marta. I found it in the archive with her other possessions. Inside is her last self-portrait, a miniature she painted the week before she died." Clara opened the locket. A young woman's face looked back at her, rendered in delicate brushstrokes that captured both beauty and sadness. Marta Lentz had known something was wrong. She had painted that knowledge into her own eyes. "I cannot keep this." "I want you to have it." Lentz's voice was steady. "Not as a memorial to her, but as a reminder to you. Marta believed that beauty could exist alongside darkness, that creating something meaningful was the only real answer to suffering." "I am not an artist." "No, but you are a survivor. And survivors have an obligation to make their survival mean something." Clara closed the locket and fastened it around her neck. The silver was warm against her skin. "What will you do now?" "Travel." "Perhaps." Lentz moved toward the door. There is a world beyond Switzerland and Austria, beyond the empire and its expectations. I have spent my entire life serving institutions that failed my sister. I would like to see what exists outside those walls. Alone? He paused with his hand on the doorknob. That depends. Clara understood the question he was not quite asking. They had been allies bound by vengeance, partners in a mission that had consumed everything else. What they might become without that mission remained undefined. "I leave for Florence next week," she said. "The train passes through Milan. There is a connecting route to Rome, eventually to Naples. Emma wrote about wanting to see Pompeii, the ruins of something destroyed and preserved simultaneously." That sounds like a journey worth taking. "It would be easier with company." Easier? Lentz smiled, a rare expression that transformed his scarred face. Or more complicated? Probably both. Clara returned with a smile. But I have discovered that complications are preferable to emptiness. He left without answering, but his silence contained its own response. Clara gathered Emma's letters and sat in the chair by the window. Outside, the rain was easing. Patches of blue appeared between the clouds, promising sunshine before evening. She read until the light failed. Emma's voice filled the room, speaking of fears and hopes, of suspicions and small moments of beauty discovered even in the shadow of death. Her sister had known something terrible was happening. She had fought it the only way she knew how, by documenting, by preserving, by ensuring that her story would survive, even if she did not. The final letter was dated 3 days before Emma died. "Clara," it began, "if you are reading this, then I am gone, and you have found what I left behind. Do not mourn me too deeply. I have made my peace with what is coming. Instead, live. Live with the fierce determination that our mother showed when she defied her family to marry father. Live with the curiosity that made you climb every tree and question every assumption. Live because I cannot, and because your life will be my continuation. I love you. I have always loved you. And I know that whatever darkness I face now, you will bring light to it eventually. Your devoted sister, Emma." Clara wept then, finally, completely releasing the grief she had channeled into fury for so long. She wept for Emma and Marta and 17 other women whose names she had memorized from Richter's ledger. She wept for the Baroness, trapped between complicity and victimhood. She wept for herself, for the person she had been before the telegram arrived, and the person she had become since. When the tears finally stopped, she felt something she had not experienced since childhood. Lightness. Not happiness, not yet, but the possibility of happiness. The understanding that tomorrow could be different from today. She packed Emma's letters carefully into her traveling case. She laid out the midnight blue gown, cleaned and mended, a reminder of what she had survived. She placed Marta's locket beside her other jewelry, a talisman against forgetting. Then she wrote 3 letters of her own. To her father, accepting his apology but declining his invitation. To the families of Richter's victims, offering condolences and the names of lawyers who could help them navigate the compensation process. To the journalist from Zurich, thanking him for his coverage and requesting that he continue investigating similar institutions across Europe. The last letter she addressed to Captain Maximilian Lentz, care of his hotel in the city center. "The train to Florence departs Tuesday at 9, she wrote. "The journey takes 14 hours. I have reserved a private compartment. If you choose to join me, I will be waiting on the platform. If you choose otherwise, I will understand." She signed it simply, Clara. The next morning dawned clear and bright. Clara stood on the platform, her traveling case at her feet, Emma's diary tucked into her handbag alongside the bundle of letters. Steam rose from the waiting locomotive. Passengers hurried past, bound for destinations she would never know. She had arrived early. The station clock showed 8:30.
30 minutes to wait, 30 minutes to wonder.
At 8:45, a figure appeared at the far end of the platform. Lentz walked toward her through the morning light, carrying a single bag and wearing a traveling coat that had seen better days. His pace was unhurried, his expression unreadable. But when he reached her, something in his eyes suggested that he too had spent the night making peace with ghosts. "Florence," he said, "and then Rome, and Naples, and wherever else the journey leads." "That could take months." "It could take years." Clara smiled. "We have time." The conductor called for boarding. Clara picked up her case. Lentz offered his arm. Together they walked toward the waiting train. Behind them, the Alps rose against the morning sky, their peaks still crowned with winter snow. Somewhere in those mountains, the Belvedere Sanatorium stood empty, its windows dark, its secrets finally exposed to light. Ahead lay Italy, warmth, the Mediterranean Emma had dreamed of.
Ahead lay the unknown, uncertain and frightening and full of possibility.
Clara stepped aboard the train and did not look back.